Brandon, thank you for returning. I had a lot to say, and still do have a lot to say, about the 2006 Superman Returns, which ran 2 hours and like almost 30 minutes. Lots and lots of notes. But there is one specific note that I think is more important than all of the rest.
Okay.
I notated that the movie felt like a love letter to not just the Soul Kinds, but Richard Donner and Christopher Reeve, Gene Hackman as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because while watching Superman Returns, there were just so many echoes of what was, or callbacks, things that just felt like, man, you have reverence toward the prior version of Superman that had been made.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, so after the open rolls, we'll break down the general concepts that happened throughout. But I just thought that was, to me, my biggest takeaway was that it was a love letter.
Yeah.
A part of me thinks, possibly, Lois and Clark are the least like Margot Kidder and Christopher Reeve. Whereas, I think Kevin Spacey is not even playing Lex Luthor. I think he's playing Gene Hackman in the film. Like, his characteristic, seeing the collection of wigs, the obsession with land, like, so much of Kevin Spacey's Lex Luthor felt like it wanted to be Gene Hackman, which is not a bad thing. I both enjoy Gene Hackman, and I think Kevin Spacey did such enjoyable work in the film.
His cadence is like Gene Hackman. It's kind of crazy.
Oh, I loved it.
And honestly, watching him again, it felt like he was the one who had the most fun besides actress who played Kitty.
Oh yeah, Elizabeth Banks.
Yeah, Elizabeth.
Yeah, so Kitty being here instead of Eve Tessmacher, I thought was a good evolution of the Lex Luthor character, because he's moved on from, the love interest. But all of the Luthor gang, whether it be Cal Penn, Elizabeth Banks, or all the nameless, faceless cronies, I enjoyed his clear villainy, if you will. Like, there were times, especially, let's say, Smallville, or other iterations, where I'm just like, you don't like that guy, but I'm not sure you're a full-on as bad as maybe you could be. But there was no doubt about it here. And as far as one of the things that I thought was so noticeable when it came to Lois from this film and the prior films, was her unwillingness to hold back when it comes to getting a story. So much so that she takes Jason into the yacht that once she and he both see the wigs, she knows it was the wrong move. But it's like, I was like, it just felt so Lois to not even give it a second thought to go into a place of danger.
Yeah, but just like, come on.
Yeah, you should have grown past this.
Yeah.
I think that hopefully by the end of this film she's realized, let's not take the kid into danger. It's just one of those things. And when seeing it, I wrote down, this is a bad move. But I think there's at least an argument to be made that if not everybody, then most people can understand. A lot of times when they know themselves really well, they're like, this is my shortcoming. Like, I fell back into this pattern of a mistake that I often make. In her case, it's wanting the story so much that you're willing to go too far.
Yeah, I kind of, when people said like they had a problem with that, I always just kind of thought, well, Superman has come back,
Mm-hmm.
and she knows that this dude can basically hear
Yes.
wherever
That's true.
is. So she's just not even like subconsciously just like, oh yeah, okay, I'm just gonna go.
Gonna be fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to be fine. Even
Yeah, and I totally can get behind that, but like I said, I almost think that it goes deeper than that. It's not so much that she's leaning on him, but that's just a flaw that she has within herself to think. Because like I know personally in the past, Mrs. Super Oz was like worried when her mom was in the hospital, and I kept saying she's gonna be fine. She's always been fine. That's, I don't know. It's just the way I feel. And like with her, she's like, well, I've always made it through whatever hard times I've been through, so I'm gonna be okay. And so I can totally see that as a thing that makes sense for a character. So, no knock on Brandon Routh. I think Brandon Routh did good work, but there was just, we've talked about this many a time, but there's just a couple of nitpicks I have, and these ones aren't his fault, but like the trunks are almost barely there.
Mm-hmm.
The redundant S that's on the belt, and then the S on the chest being not too smaller than I would like, right? But again, none of those are his fault.
Right.
There's just, I don't know, there's just a part of me that feels a touch of a disconnect between him and Christopher Reeve. But it's not like strong or even severe to any degree. It's just like, I know you're not him.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like we said with Kevin Spacey and Gene Hackman, it's like, oh, you're trying to be him. And maybe there's an argument being made you shouldn't be trying to play another actor.
Right.
Even though I did find it quite enjoyable for Spacey. The thing that does stand out when it comes to Brandon Routh to me is, I don't know if this is actual eye color or if he was wearing contacts, but man, his eyes were just popping blue, which was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime he's Clark, I just felt so like he's endearing, right? Sometimes as Superman, I was like, oh, he's powerful, but not as relatable as I felt like Reeve was.
Yeah.
Now, and again, I don't blame Ralph for this, because I think a lot of it came down to editing and choices.
Okay.
Because everything about this movie was given time to breathe, which is good in the films where Christopher Reeve was Superman. You would see him go after saving a cat from catching people and doing all this stuff like back to back to back to back, to where it was like, it felt like so much time was happening within this short sequence. Whereas here, I'm not sure how much time had passed, but it didn't feel like much at all, realistically, because of how slowly everything appeared.
Yeah.
But again, none of that's Brandon Routh's fault.
Yeah. So, of course, people had complaints, especially still the same complaints to this day. It's one of the few films that it seems like now people have like revisionist history about movies that they didn't like in the past. Now all of a sudden, oh, I love this type of stuff. But it seems like Superman Returns, everybody's like on equal footing. When I first saw this movie, I actually like was in love with it.
Oh,
I
sure.
loved it.
I'll tell you this, it's freaking beautiful.
Yes, it's gorgeous.
Like,
still to this day.
so many times, I would just admire what is in front of the on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's beautiful. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even know how else to put it.
Yeah, it is gorgeous. Still to this day, it's shot very, very well.
Yes.
And maybe this is not the correct word, but after rewatching it, I feel like this movie's tone is rather somber or maybe like lethargic in a way.
Can I tell you the one word I used to describe it?
Yeah.
Timeless.
Okay.
So I notated when Superman returned to Metropolis.
Mm-hmm.
I said, this feels to me like Batman the Animated Series. There are computers, but the cars, did you notice the cars were old school?
Yeah, even
all
the buildings.
all the architecture, I was about to say, all the architecture felt old school. But it was a blending of, just like with Batman the Animated Series, of the old and the new school, where it felt timeless. Because if I had to pinpoint when this was, I'd be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I love that about it, because it's, I mean, legitimately, and I know this is self-serving to say this, I wrote Everlasting Survivors to be accessible for whenever you read it. I didn't I know what day it's happening, I know what year it's happening, but I don't tell the reader, because if you get it the day that it came out or 10 years later, I want you to be able to feel like, oh, this could be anytime USA.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the way I feel about Superman Returns. It's just like, this is somewhere between 1986 and right now. That's the beauty of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And this film is, I'm going to say that it doesn't feel like your traditional superhero movie, because to me, it's very slow.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it takes its time, almost to, like, a little bit of its fault.
Mm-hmm.
It was trying to be, like, melodramatic
Mm-hmm.
and a stage play for a superhero movie. Because there's a lot of subplots with, Lois actually is married now.
Well, engaged.
Engaged.
It's a very long engagement.
Yes, engaged to
Richard
Richard.
White.
Yes, Richard.
My goodness, I cannot help but praise that human being. So, not just James Marsden's performance, because that was spectacular,
Mm-hmm.
but Richard, the character, just feels like the most noble dude, period. And I think Jason has a lot to do with it, because Richard don't seem like an idiot. He seems pretty with it. So
Right.
I don't think he's stupid enough to believe that Jason is his, and he's probably even smart enough to realize that article she wrote about spending the night with Superman
Has a little bit more. Right?
it's like, oh, Perry may have come up with the title, but I wonder where he got it from.
Because, he asked her.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's like,
But
were you in love with him?
And she says everybody was.
Yeah. He's like, that's not what I meant.
Exactly. But he just felt like such a legitimate, caring human that I was like, I'm on this guy's side. So much so that when Superman is at their house twice. Once he's outside looking in, and the other time he's inside Jason's room. I'm just like, I'm not sure that you're doing the right thing there, sir, because to me, Richard is the one she should be with, and spoiler, Superman doesn't take Lois from him, thankfully, in my opinion. Thank you for being here at Mr. Super Oz. This video is going out, and this channel only exists because I, Oz, founded Gamble Comics, which first release was Everlasting Survivors, a 68-page graphic novel called All Day Long. Available now. Follow the link in the description that will take you to gamblecomics.com. While there, you can get hats, shirts, posters, much, much more. But most importantly, the story itself.
Because one, I guess in this weird thing, it is kind of creepy that, you got this dude listening to your conversations, X-ray vision, outside your house. But, Superman.
Yeah, it's because we know him that
it doesn't cross the line.
It doesn't cross the line, exactly. Right. But if this was, say, Homelander or
even a Zack Snyder, maybe.
Exactly, yeah. I'm just saying, any version that isn't based around the man that we know that is good, then you can start to question it. But because we're familiar with him, then that's what let me say, okay, I can let that go and not be bothered by it.
Right. But about the tone, what I think it was deliberate, like this very slow pace, this very thing, and something that maybe even has like more to do with today is, I think what this movie does very well, and what was hard to grasp back then, is this idea of hope.
Yes.
Why the world needs Superman as a theme.
Yes.
That's, talked about throughout this film. It's like, hey, does the world need Superman?
Yep.
And when he comes back, it's with the bang, of course, because he stops his plane. But it's the little things when Clark goes back to Daily Planet and he sees all the televisions about him going all throughout the world, saving people and saving lives, and how it's giving people hope again.
Absolutely.
But Lois, because she's so bitter, of course we understand why he just left.
Yes.
And it makes sense. Yeah. It's like whoop, you just left without saying anything. Superman's like, okay, my bad. I didn't really think that went through. But hey, they thought they found my planet, so I just deuces. And that's what I think that this Superman does very well. Besides the Donner version.
Can I add to it?
Yeah.
Two things. One, I literally wrote down, this movie is not for the TikTok generation. Because, again, nothing is rushed. Nothing is everything. You have to take your time and take it in. So I literally wrote that down at one point. But here's the other thing. When Superman is saving literally Metropolis and probably the rest of the continental United States,
Mm-hmm.
I wrote down how much willpower it takes to fight past the kryptonite that's breaking through this. I kept calling it Lexington Island because it's like a new Krypton, but it's Lexus. I kept notating it's Lexington Island. But I was like, okay, this shows that he's got the will to push through. And then when he falls after pushing through, and then people have that appreciation when they're looking up to the sky at this man who literally saved them all from falling into the ocean, drowning and dying. I was like, that's Superman. Is pushing through the pain to save.
Right.
Oh,
yeah. Because a lot of criticisms back then when I was looking at reviews is, well, Superman wasn't doing enough, which is kind of true in a.
But again, to me, this is like a day or two, maybe a week or two max, because everything has so much time that I'm like, I don't know how much time has passed, but like it doesn't feel like it's been more than a couple weeks that he's been back on Earth.
Right. Yeah. To me,
yes,
that was very deliberate.
Yes.
So this Superman, it's weird because I think what truly doesn't work is trying to have reverence for the Superman, but also trying to be its own thing. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where it falls because it's like, well, is Brandon Routh supposed to be the Superman?
I do think so.
Yeah, and it's like, well, if he is...
Do you know what I think the biggest disconnect between Brandon Routh being Christopher Reeve at the same time that he's himself? His mom being mad that he was gone for 5 years. Because, and this is, as a matter of fact, one of my biggest complaints about the Christopher Reeve movie, so I don't blame Bryan Singer for ignoring this. Mm-hmm. I blame Richard Donner for putting it in there. But in the first film, he was gone for 12 years from leaving after his dad dies and being in the Fortress of Solitude. And I thought that was ridiculous. I was like, it takes you 12 years to listen to some crystals? Mm-hmm. That's ridiculous. But my point is, if he was gone for 12 years and then he's gone for 5 years, oh, hey, Mom, I got back 7 years quicker this time. So don't be mad at me for it. Mm-hmm. But like I said, I don't blame Routh or the story for her being upset. I'm just like, I understand ignoring the 12 years away. Like, if I was to have re-edited the prior Supermans, I would have got rid of that line because it shouldn't take you 12 years. I mean, it's like, what? Even as a 18-year-old, he's got to go through high school again? Like, or not high school, all of school.
Right. Yeah. And I think this is why no other film has attempted to film in the past get him just basically. Actually, sorry, they have Mad Max. It's the only one to me that actually has worked. Sure. That people have liked is Mad Max.
Okay.
Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
He hasn't done it in a while. He's too old, so they recast it.
Yeah. Tom Hardy.
Yeah, Tom Hardy.
Yeah. Let me caveat this question with: I've never watched Mad Max original or Extra Crispy either which way, but is not James Bond that way, where all of the actors are the same character?
Good question. Yes and no.
Okay, yes
so it honestly depends on who you're talking to.
Okay, that's fine. I was just curious.
For instance, when David Lazenby took over after Sean Connery for a little bit, the second James Bond, there's a famous line where it's like, that didn't happen to the other guy. And it's like a wink and a nod.
Yeah.
But they're supposed to be the same character.
Exactly.
But they still,
Yeah, there is another guy. Yeah.
Right. But then all of a sudden you have different. So, yeah, it's kind of.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's a good point. It depends on the person. Or, for instance, the Batman. You have two movies with
Kilmer and
Kilmer are supposed to be. They're all supposed to be the same.
Correct.
Batman, but. Of course, different tone, themes.
Dramatically.
Yeah, dramatically.
Well, and do you know this, and you may have watched my reimagining video with Josiah, you may not have, but my point is, there were only 2 actors that kept the same characters throughout all 4 films. You know who they were?
Yes, it was Commissioner Gordon.
Yep.
And Alfred.
Yep.
Right. Yep.
Those 2 pieces of continuity are what make me think that is their intention, is that they're always the same character. But back to the point, though, it is a struggle to say, oh, all that was is canon,
Mm-hmm.
and all that we're doing is also canon. When especially some of the things that were done are like questionable.
Yeah,
at best.
questionable. And you know, none of it. It's kind of interesting because I think Superman is so important that, and Batman's like this too.
Yes.
That if you're going to have a new actor, you might as well just reset it or restart it.
Sure.
I think that's why when Andrew Garfield they decided to replace, they didn't just figure out a way to put Andrew Garfield in the MCU.
Yes.
They just said, no, we'll just axe it.
Well, and let's be real. When they brought all three of them together, it all was clarified that it was the right decision.
Yes.
Like, I'm sure some person at some point was like, oh, that's the wrong call. Pick this one, pick that one, do this, do that.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as they brought them all three in the same scene, it's like, oh, no, that was the right call.
Same thing that they're going to do with Batman. They're going to have a new Batman instead of
Pattinson.
Yeah, Pattinson, because it's like two different styles, tones,
Yes.
what they're going for. And I think that's always what's just going to be going against Brandon Routh or this version of Superman is. It's like, we should have probably just made a new version or film.
Well, with that said, I think it's perfect time to say, I disagree with you, Brandon.
Okay.
I give this a great 5 out of 5 stars.
Okay.
Because I had watched Superman 1, Superman 2, and then Superman Returns. Because according to Singer, he ignored 3 and 4.
Mm-hmm.
And this is meant to be a follow-up to 1 and 2. And I just felt like so much of it felt comparable and enjoyable and so relatable as far as this feels like it fits. And so that's why I was just like, yes, this is absolutely legitimately great.
Mm-hmm. I like this movie on its own. I
Okay.
give this to me on its own 4 or 5. I'm like in between.
Sure.
On its own. I don't know. Watching Superman 1 and 2 and then watching it with this, I'm like, I don't know. For some reason, to me, the continuity just doesn't. It like matches up,
Yeah.
but it just doesn't.
It's not perfectly
Yeah,
matched.
it's like trying to.
I'll tell
take
you. I'll
that
tell you what I really did. So what I really did, and I always do this. It's not like this is some big surprise. I in my head already started editing 1 and 2 into one solid film,
Okay.
and threw away a bunch of stuff I didn't want. And so the Christopher Reeve movie followed by the Brandon Routh movie fits so much better with my head canon.
Okay.
And so there's not a lot of conflict when I edit the movie in my brain.
Gotcha.
And so that's probably why that I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Or thought that it fit good, is because I just naturally am like, oh, I don't need this. We can jump to here, move that around a little. You know, I'm always moving the deck chairs on the Titanic, basically,
Mm-hmm.
when I'm watching things.
Yeah. Oh, but something that this movie did.
Oh, it did have its own Titanic too. I love that. Oh, that was so good.
Is that yes, of course, everybody had these complaints, but to me, it feels like when Superman Returns, everything like Zack Snyder heard the complaints about Superman Returns. Superman wasn't fighting enough. He wasn't punching things. You know.
Is that why you had all the Watchmen have Superman's powers too?
Yeah. Could what was it that Superman? Oh, could people tell? How can people tell Clark Kent from like Lois couldn't tell? I honestly think yes, everybody has said that, but I think like this film
is what led to
yeah
what comes next for our upcoming All or Nothing for the Zack Snyder Justice League trilogy. Tune in next week to find out.
yes.